We're calling the meeting to order from Frontenac Island Council, March 11th, 10 o'clock. We'll begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are meeting on the land that has been under the citizenship of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat for time immemorial. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet, live, and play on this land. And we thank all generations of Indigenous peoples from the past to the present who currently continue to extend the sharing of this land with us. We recognize and deeply appreciate their ongoing connection to this place. We also recognize the contribution of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples who now make this region their home and who have both shaped and strengthened this community and our province and country as a whole. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and ongoing importance of Indigenous peoples to the area must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across our country. Now, I remind everybody to mute your phones and please sign in. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll start this meeting with delegation. We had Kathy Gans was to be here, but I see others present for the Wolf Island Medical Claim, requesting financial support. So I'll welcome Nancy Lyons.
Yeah, so unfortunately Kathy couldn't, well, thanks for having us here. Unfortunately, Kathy couldn't be here today. There's a death in the family, so we have the backup singers. My name is Nancy Lyons. I'm on the board, as well as Sheila McDonald. And we're here, I believe you got the letter, from your package. So we're here seeking your support to request funding from the county for Frontenac in the amount of $20,000 to support the hiring of a nurse practitioner for a one-year term. We understand the county does have money set aside for recruitment, and so it has not been earmarked as far as we know. So we'd like to tap into that resource. It's a one-year pilot, a concept of using the nurse practitioner as opposed to the physician. During that time, in that next year, we'll be building a business case and looking at other options in order to secure funding for ongoing support.
Okay.
Any questions, comments?
Okay. Councillor Jablonski.
Actually, I'm part of the committee, so I'm up to date what's going on and fully support that 1,000%.
Okay. Councillor Holton.
I think it's a great idea. If we can do anything to improve our planning, maybe get stability there, would be nice.
Councillor Ackland.
Oh, again, I support it, like you need some kind of,
Right on.
doesn't matter where it starts, you just need help.
Thank you.
Councillor Saunders.
Hey there, you mentioned county, this is, with the township, so are you looking for support in writing from the township
To go to the county.
okay,
Yes, thank you.
I would support that.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And yes, I think it's a good thing to ask from the county, and there is money that's been set aside in that for the specific recruitment of physicians and nurse practitioners. So it'd be good to ask. So can I have a mover now for the first motion? And that is that the council directs staff to prepare a letter of support for the Wolf Island Community Medical Center funding request to the County of Frontenac in the amount of $20,000 to attract and hire a nurse practitioner for a one-year pilot project that would reestablish access to island residents on a weekly basis. And have a mover, Councillor Jablonski, seconder, Councillor Ackley. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, it's carried.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next we have a presentation from Joe Delvin and Sonia Zoltan of the Planning Services agreement at 2023. And move forward at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Just would like to talk briefly a bit about our department. We recently went to the county's Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee to present our work plan and budget for 2023. And we decided to go to the 3 townships. We provide planning services to give you an update of the work we did last year, both for your township, but the other 2 townships, and also at the regional level, and where we're hoping to go in the next couple of years. Next, please. So I want to talk about 3 different things: the agreement that we have signed between the county and 4 townships on our planning services, a review of what we did last year and the workload we had, and our work plan and priorities for the next 2 years. Next, please. So the planning services agreement that we worked on was signed in 2018, and I recognize now that there are very few councilors across Frontenac that were involved when that happened. So I just wanted to explain to you that it's signed by all 4 townships and the county. And we track all of our planning hours. We have tracking software. So when I say we, planning department at the county is myself, Ms. Bolton, who's the manager of planning, as well as 2 community planners. Dmitry Krylovich does a lot of work for the islands, so you know him. We bill for every file that we're dealing with, or every inquiry we have, etc. Everything's tracked. And at the end of the year, I sum up all the hours, and then we bill on a quarterly basis every year, based on what we call the 3-year rolling average. Next, please. I'll explain that to you. So here is the work we've done in the last 3 years. The islands are in the 3rd column. So the reason we do the 3-year average is because some of the work we do for the townships, if we're updating a major planning file or updating an official plan or dealing with a bigger issue like Marysville, we may be spending more hours in that community than we normally would. We're spending more hours doing work that isn't driven by planning applications. So for 3 years, when you do it over a 3-year period, that bump that may happen in 1 year is smoothed out. So in the case of the islands, you'll note that your hours went down last year by more than 10%. Your share went down in 2023 by now to 11%, but over 3 years, it's still at approximately 12.6% of the total. Next, please. So this is the total number of planning hours we've tracked since 2016 across the 3 townships. You can see what happened when COVID hit. We started getting a lot of inquiries all across Frontenac. So it's a combination of that. And it's also the fact that Frontenac is now getting known out there to people, whether it's waterfront development or developers coming in here, we're attracting more interest. So last year, the hours actually went down. Next slide, please. So the overall hours went down to 13%. It's the first decline since 2020. Now I know that we're heading back to pre-pandemic levels, but you never really know in any given year how busy you're going to be. We'll start to get a sense next month. That's usually when people start coming in to see us about their plans for the year. But there is a trend that it's going down. Your percentage again went down 13%, North went down 35%. And most of the hours we track are related to development planning. Those are consents, minor variances, rezonings, rather than policy work like Marysville. Next, please. And these are your hours. You can see that it was relatively low in the first 3 years, and then it started to pick up, in part because of more applications, but primarily because of the work we were doing on, we did a review of severances on both islands and whether we would increase the number. That was over 180 hours total. And then the work we've done the last few years on the Marysville project. That's where you see those numbers, but they did come down last year. Next, please. So I've already noted that almost 3 out of every 4 hours we work in on the islands is related to development plan. So last year, some of the percentage of the hours we spent, so just pre-application meetings and inquiries, 117 hours. That is not unusual. That's when people come to us and say, I have an idea. Here's the direction I want to go. We like to give them advice early on, so they're going in the right direction. Or if it's a bad idea, we say, no, we can't support that, we think you should revisit that, so it's very common that at least 20% of our time is spent on those things, and that could be a phone call, it could be a meeting, it could be an email. It could be responding to an inquiry we get from an online form. We spent almost 90 hours working with the Queen students on the Marysville design guidelines, those hours are mostly mine and Sonia's. Sonia and I both have an opinion that that work, which will be delivered to you soon, if it had been done by a consultant, would have been over $100,000 cost, which you're not being charged for. And then 40 hours of report writing, and then the secondary plan, not associated with the design guidelines, approximately 33 hours. Next, please. This is the total number of planning applications we've been dealing with. And again, you can see what happened when COVID hit. Didn't affect the islands as much as Central and North Frontenac, but we certainly had a number of increase in hours. But you can see the number of applications on the islands over the years has been relatively stable. Next, please. So again, the decline overall, we did hit that credible peak of 174. Fortunately, County Council agreed to hire another planner in 2020. Well, I don't know how we would have gotten through that year in particular. But you actually had 3 extra more applications last year than we did the year before. But again, my message is it's pretty stable so far. Next, please. So this is the total number of hours we spent on the regional issues, whether it's reviewing a local official plan, all the subdivision work we do, it doesn't matter what township, if those are deemed to be county hours, and also the major planning projects like the communal services work. That was in decline because of all the work we had to do for the townships with all the applications. At one point, only one of us was actually had the time to do any kind of policy work. Next, please. So our hours went up last year by over 10%. And over half our total hours were dealing with regional planning, and that's the first time since 2020. And some of the major projects we did were the changes to provincial legislation. So the work we did for you on amending your official plan, etc. We billed that as county hours because we were doing it for all 4 townships. The communal services work took over 140 hours of my time last year. We expect to continue to do some work, even though now it's no longer a county issue because it's a municipal utility, but we have some staff, including myself, that are working with the technical group in terms of moving that utility forward this year. And then we were processing over 100 hours of subdivision work last year, and then I had to represent the county at a tribunal hearing on a subdivision appeal. The hearing only lasted a day, but in terms of getting ready for the hearing and preparing evidence, etc., my total hours on that file was almost 90. And that's, again, tribunal hearings can take a lot of time. Next, please. So here's some of the work we're looking at doing in the next 2 years. First off, and these will all have an impact on the islands. The community planning permit system, which you've invested in, you invested $25,000. We got a response to our RFP. We had 4 submissions, and we're interviewing 2 consulting firms next week. So that project is on schedule, and it will take most of the year, but that is a big step forward in protecting your water plant. But it's also going to make the process more efficient, so we'll reduce our hours off at each township. I already mentioned the work's going to continue on communal services, at least for this year, with the planning staff. We're starting to work on a region-wide natural heritage study, environmental protection study. We actually received county council budget approval 2 years ago to do the work, but we weren't able to do it because of all of our commitment to the townships. I'll be coming to county council probably in the 3rd quarter of this year to start to update our county-wide official plan. And then mostly on the economic development side of our department, but Sonia and I will both be involved in doing a regional community improvement plan for businesses. Next, please. So here's some of the things that we don't know would happen at the beginning of every year. How many applications are there going to be? How complex are they? So there's one file, for example, we were dealing with on a lake in North Frontenac. So last year, our total number of hours for North was about 640. One file alone We spent over 90 hours and it's not finished yet. It's going to go through all of this year. It's a very complex waterfront application with a lot of interest for neighbors, etc. So you just never know how complex a file can be. And then unexpected planning issues, the province may not be done changing planning legislation. We have to be prepared for that. I've already talked about how much time tribunal appeals can take. Whether we're representing the township or representing the county. We're not sure how many subdivision applications to anticipate in the next 2 years. If the utility keeps going in the right direction and the word gets out that Frontenac is supportive of new development on communal services, including in Marysville, we may get busy in a hurry. And then other things we don't even know that are on the horizon that just come out of the left field. So what did I miss?
I think we skipped over it when we touched that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's okay. So this is what we're doing at the township level, which, for all 3 townships. We're working on redeveloping former school site on Charlotte Lake. Sonia is the project manager on that. We've been working on that file for about 4 years. And that would be developed on communal services. South Frontenac Township is in the midst of updating its official plan. Frontenac County Council is the approval authority, so our office is involved in reviewing that. We'll be working on bringing the zoning changes necessary for the Marysville area based on the secondary plan that what the Queen students have done, probably in the 3rd quarter of this year. We talked to you already about updating your official plan. I'm happy to have more conversations with you. Sooner than later, I think it's an issue you should be considering. Your plan is out of date. And then I'm going to each township, and I'll be back here to talk to you about amending your plan to be really clear about where you want development on communal services to be on the islands. You want it to be just in Marysville? You want to allow it in the rural areas of the community? You want to allow it on Simcoe, Wolf, and Howe Islands? Those are conversations you need to have with the community, so I'll be coming back possibly next month to start that conversation. You move ahead now, Vanessa. I think that's it. So other than any questions you may have, thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions about it.
Councillor Jablonski.
A lot of information, Joe, thanks.
You're welcome.
A lot of changes come up and see it hopefully keep cut down some costs for us.
Well, with the community planning permit system, which probably started to kick in 2025. And then Dimitri came here with delegated authority bylaw that delegates easy consents. That one in particular will save us a lot of time. We won't have to go write a full planning report. For the applicant, they won't have to go through that community adjustment process. It'll cut an application time significantly.
Great, thanks, Joe.
Okay, Councillor Holton.
I'm good, I think. Anything we can do to simplify this.
Yeah, that's what we're trying.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Acton.
So far it sounds good, but if we're gonna increase like the lot of subdivisions should we increase the lot size, the lot allowability? Like from 3 to 4, 4 to 5?
So a plan of subdivision is different than a consent. A plan of subdivision, you can build, even if you've had like 3 or 4 consents, depending on what's left of your property, depending on the zoning, you could still build a subdivision. But there haven't been any subdivisions built on the islands while Spithead Road on Howe was back in the early 80s, I believe. So, yeah. And then there was, I can't remember the name of the subdivision near Barrett's Bay, east of Barrett's Bay on Wolf. Again, that was back in the day when municipal affairs approved it. However,
Do you know the year of that?
that was, yes, I do, I think it was 1981 on the islands, because there was a question, so it was approved by the ministry. It was a question by one of the citizens living in there that the township had a responsibility to maintain the roads. Because it is a township road, but the plan of subdivision said the township had to assume the road. Because the province didn't want more private roads, but they had no obligation to maintain. But if communal services is a variable, it may spark an interest in people coming here to say, I can build smaller lots, just like the expansion area for Marysville, and knit it into the existing fabric, so we'll see what happens.
Thanks.
Member, Joe, thank you for all the information, first of all. Do you look into your crystal ball and tell us your prediction on when we might see some concrete action around communal services? This keeps coming up and it's a big part of Maryville.
With respect to, particularly to the islands,
Yes.
I just attended a conference last week in Huntsville, the Ontario On-Site Wastewater Association. I met with, so those are people who install these systems, who design them. I met with engineers, and I had this jacket on, and they know what we're up to. And I did a presentation on our work, and 200 people attended. So the interest is out there, and the utility is going to become more public in the next 6 months. I think right now there still is a lack of understanding of what Frontenac has done. But within the next 12 months, it'll be very clear, and I think we're going to get an attraction. We're going to be attractive to developers. There may be some interest in Marysville within the next, well, probably after 12 months. In 2025, we may have someone coming in and say, I'd like to start to look at helping the building into the community, especially once you have a new ferry.
Okay, just to follow up on that one, I believe at Roma, Kelly Pender, the CAO in the county, made a presentation where he alluded to the pushback from the province, it seems. Can you expand on that?
So one of the things the utility has done now, which is a big step forward, and one of the reasons that communal services have never really gone very far in Ontario, is that every time a developer came forward in a community and wanted to build on decentralized water and wastewater, they were obligated to sign a municipal responsibility agreement with the local council, which is an important consideration because what it did was it obliged the municipality, if the system failed and the developer was gone or had gone bankrupt, the municipality would take it over. In the majority of Eastern Ontario, none of the townships have the fiscal capacity to take that on if there's a failure. So most townships have consistently said that if you want to build in our community and you're going to put $1 million of infrastructure in the ground, we need you to provide us a check for another $1 million that we can put in a reserve fund in case something goes wrong. Now that the utility is in place, that need for municipal responsibility agreement is gone. The risk will be taken by the utility, not the municipality. So that's a big game changer. But the second part are the provincial environmental approvals. Now that we have a utility in place, it's a public utility, so any new water system, drinking water system, has to be approved as a municipal drinking water system. Private developer can build a well for communal, and they can build a wastewater treatment for communal, and they don't need any provincial approvals. Doesn't matter what scale. But that won't be the case in Frontenac. Right now, for example, in Verona, they're doing a municipal class environmental assessment to look at a building up to 100 units in Verona on decentralized systems. So they've got to go through the class environmental assessment process, which has already taken a year. They also need to amend the source protection plan of the Conservation Authority, which is really challenging. The argument I think we're trying to make, and I think this is what Kelly alluded to at Roma, is that if you have a utility that's going to take these systems over, it's going to be in public hands. They're always going to be managed, operated, maintained. Unlike a private developer, you can be guaranteed that that's going to happen. So why do we have to go through the same approval process time after time after time if we're putting the same communal box on the ground that's already been approved by the ministry that will be owned by the public? And so we're continuing to work and make the argument. It's not me, it's going to be the utility that will be doing that with the assistance of staff to the province to say, this is new, this utility is new. We figured out how to do it. we will eventually have staff that will be managing this, so look at a different path to formal approval on the environmental side.
A few more questions. When you're going through the presentation that you mentioned that all 4 townships had signed for the planning services, yet South Frontenac isn't really part of the planning services.
They have signed the agreement. They do have their own department, but if, in case they need our services, they can approach us, and that happened in 2015, where their planning, their planner resigned very quickly, with 2 weeks' notice in the middle of the summer. And we were asked to go in and take over the department, which we did for 5 months, and they had to pay for our hours. So it's available to all 4 townships.
So they don't pay the overall
No.
support costs in any way, shape or form.
Not for the township hours. That's cost recovery. They are involved in the county.
Okay, and going back to the idea of the Frontenac Islands official plan update, and that when it was first raised by the planning department, there was a significant pushback by some on council on that, so there hasn't been a decision made to move
Yeah.
forward on that. And I believe your North Frontenac that just finished their official plan.
No, North did theirs. We did their plan in 2017, and we just finished working on the central plan. I think it got approved in 2020, 2021.
Okay, and the hours, the billing for something like that was around the $200,000 mark.
Well, I don't know the number itself, but the hours. The hours for central, which involved more public consultation, was over 300 hours, over 3 years. And I think by the presentation that Sonia and I made to you with your official plan, we're not sure if we would have the resources to do your plan in-house, especially now, as I noted in our staff report, one of our planners is off on maternity leave. We are getting a part-time contract planner coming in starting March 18th, but we're not sure what the workload is going to be this year in particular, so we may recommend you hire a consultant. I think we said that before, that you're looking at $120,000. We would project manage that for you, just like we're project managing the community planning permit system, but there's likely to be a cost for the township.
So there'd be additional costs from the planning department in addition to the consultant.
Yes, our hours will be tracked as well.
And going back to the Marysville design standards and zoning and that. That will be done in conjunction with the Queen's students.
These students are done on that project. Did you want to comment on that, Sonia?
Yeah, so we have gotten the final report. It's very, very large. I think what we are going to do, and I'm gonna probably speak to the CEO clerk about this in the next week or so, is looking at getting it posted online and given to council. So that people can see. The next 2 council meetings are on how, not on roll. So we would be looking at sort of like an electronic circulation. We have a list of interested community members that we would like notify that it's online. And we would work with the township to put probably a couple copies in the Wolf Island library as well. But we'd essentially probably come back to council next month to just ask 2 things. One, that you receive it in fulfillment of the terms of the contract that you have with the school. And 2, that you leave it posted for public comment, probably for a couple of months. It is a really lengthy document, and the reality is until our one planner is back from parental leave, which will be in early June, we're not going to have the capacity to do too much with it. But we would like to receive comments from the public, and then staff would dive back into it probably June and through the summer to come back and make some recommendations for how you can take that work and implement it through the zoning.
Okay, just to step back a bit, Marysville secondary plan was initiated post 2011 transportation study with the identified agreement of a dual ferry service, right? Which at this point in time has not materialized yet, right? So keep that in consideration, that because getting the 80-car ferry is actually what the recommendation was from a 1994 study into Wolf Island transportation is being urgently needed by 2000. So if we get this ferry running and it's only one ferry, we're basically catching up to the year 2000, not 2024.
And I think certainly it takes a long time to change these planning documents and put the zoning in place. What I can say from a zoning perspective for, say, the expansion area where the new growth is needed to go, is you could put a holding symbol on it, right? Something that says, development can't occur here until such times as we have confirmation from MTO in terms of ferry capacity. So there are things that you can do to allow the overall project to continue to move forward, but if you have servicing concerns with respect to transportation, you could address that in the zoning through the use of a holding symbol. And that just keeps everything moving forward, but it's that sort of check and balance in place until such times as you have some newer, better news from MTO.
Okay, well, on that same note, then any official plan amendments related to the communal services sort of an academic issue at this point in time.
Yeah, so it would be similar to, we took an amendment to the county official plan last year to put policies in place with respect to communal services. And they're really, they would be there to provide guidance. So the policy themselves doesn't actually trigger anything to happen. It's just those policies are there so that when somebody does want to develop on communal services, you guys have had a chance to have a conversation as a community about how you want those services to be used and where. And that provides guidance to future developers. So they're enabling in nature. They don't, in those themselves, they don't do anything, but they allow somebody else in the future to understand how you expect those services to be used.
Yeah, and it also gives you some control too. So for example, the rural lands is something that potentially is a concern because right now your official plan says you can have subdivisions in the rural area. With a large 200-acre parcel of land, someone could walk in and say, I want to build 250 residential units on this property, so that's why you need to have the conversation. We want to have rules in place about maximizing the number of lots that can be developed on communal rural area, those kinds of things. So you can be proactive rather than reactive.
Okay, and I'll just say that that's not a far-flung idea. And that by some developers and that in the ferry at this point in time is to hold that piece. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'll need a mover and a seconder. Be it resolved that the council receives the information, the county planning's administrative report entitled 2023 Planning Services and 2024-25 planning priorities. So it's received for information. Yeah, mover, Councillor Halton, seconder, Councillor Saunders. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? No, carried. Thank you very much. Now we've gotten to the consent agenda. And that which is adoption and receipt of the minutes for February the 12th, 2024 council meeting. Has there been any errors or omissions in that? Any changes? Can I have a mover and a seconder that the February 12th, 2024 council meeting minutes be adopted as presented and amended? Councillor Holton, Councillor Acton. Any further discussion on that?
Oh,
Yes.
just, I guess for my purposes, I thought the consent agenda included all of these items on here and they were passed with one motion unless somebody wanted to pull out separately or.
No, I was doing it as the adoption of the minutes and then we'll get to the next one, which will be the information.
Sorry, I thought the purpose of the consent agenda was to list all of those and have them approved on one day.
I have the sheet from the clerk and that, and it's for the council meeting minutes to be adopted, presented, and amended. Yes, Vanessa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So typically, Deputy Mayor Saunders is correct. However, traditionally, I have been doing it this way. Going forward, we can do one motion, and then if there's any information items that a council member wishes to pull out for further discussion, we can certainly pull that one out. for example, AMO February 22nd, if there was a member that wished to discuss that one further, we would pass the consent agenda motion and then discuss that matter that is pulled out and addressed separately. And then if there was any direction with regards to having staff prepare a letter for whatever the case is, then council could give direction with respect to that. So just a little bit of a clarification for everyone, sorry.
Okay. I see that there's value in keeping it separate and keeping the minutes are something of historic, whereas the other, to me, has more potential action. It can be information, but it can be pulled out. Historic to me is separate and apart, but for today, the motion is February 12th, 2024, council meeting minutes be adopted as presented and amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No, carried. Okay, now we have information items. We have AMO watch file of 2024, February 15th, February 22nd, also, and February 29th. As well as the IESO Trans-Alta settlement statements. And I'd like to pull out the IESO settlement statements that will get, anybody else see anything in that information items that they'd like to have more clarification on? Councilor Saunders?
I'm the same as you, Mayor. I could use some further explanation about these reports.
Okay. All right. Should I get a motion to get that on the table now, Madam Clerk? Since it's not just going to be for information, it's not for discussion.
Through you, Madam Mayor, unless there's any changes, you're still going to receive it, you're just going to discuss it, correct?
Right, so I can do this now. I have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Colton. Councillor Ackley. Okay. So Councillor Saunders, would you like to start with your discussion and questions?
Thank you, Mayor. So, I guess for the public, there were a lot of documents attached to the agenda. And quite frankly, there were a lot of numbers in there and I didn't know really what they meant. So I didn't know whether there could be some explanation of them or what they're trying to tell us.
That's the IESO Trans-Alta
Yeah.
piece? Okay, I thought it was the animal which ones.
So the IESO.
Okay, that's the question I had on the image. Who wants to speak to that first?
Perhaps Councillor Jablonski can address that, as I'm not familiar with the documentation.
Who's did it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, our deputy clerk administrative assistant, had reached out to TransAlta requesting, the previous submissions, annual statements that is part of your motion, later in the meeting. These are the documentations that, our admin assistant received and forwarded on to me for inclusion with the package. That being said, perhaps Councillor Jablonski can further provide further information with respect to those documentation.
Okay, Councillor Jablonski.
Yeah, no, thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks, thanks, Melissa. I don't mean to be a stick in the mud, but our contract with CREC and CHD actually asked that some of this information posted here be not made public. I like to strike these three files from this conversation. It sort of goes against our agreement with the turbine company. Clauses 40 and 41 asked that this not be. We are. So I'd like to strike these three records from this meeting. And you have council decide to do after that, but perhaps maybe close council.
Okay, I guess I'm curious then when the deputy clerk reached out if the company was under the impression that this was being asked for to come to council.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can't honestly answer that. I can certainly find out and report back to council.
Okay, Any other comments, Councillor Holton? Councillor Ackley?
I think the only thing we were asking for at council was, if they raised their payment to us, I think, or does it go up, or with a change, but other than that. I don't see any. Well,
Yeah, when I saw these in the package and that. The first thing that struck me is they aren't what we are entitled to in that, and for one thing, it's not signed. And we're entitled to sign copies and that, and portion of revenue sharing. And that, so there is a lot more explanation needed on that. I'm not in disagreement with Councillor Jablonski in that probably it should have came into closed council, so. I believe direction to staff would be to remove it from our website. And bring it back in closed council and with more of a report assessed to it, and that in conjunction with the agreement that we have with TransAlta. And that it's, I didn't ask for this, I have a motion coming up and I still want to get to that motion. But I too was a little surprised when I saw it, and it's not exactly what I wanted to see anyways. Is there anybody that has objection to that direction to council? No? Seeing none? Okay. All right, so we'll skip past that particular piece. And everybody else has looked at the email information and the funds and things that are available to be applied for. So we'll go back to the motion. Okay, that the information items be received and filed with the exception. Of ISO reporting. Which is to be removed.
Madam Mayor, yes, Councillor Holton, Councillor Ackley, good with that amendment.
Councillor Ackley,
Yeah, they-
Councillor Holton. Councillor Holton, you were the mover and then acted as the seconder. So that the information items be received and filed with the exception of the IESO reporting, which is to be removed from our website. Okay. And we'll be giving separate direction to the clerk. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Staff reports. Okay. Ask for a mover and a seconder for the Wolf Island Fire Rescue Report number FI 001-24 regarding Simcoe Island Capital submission. I have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Jablonski and Councillor Saunders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. I approached, the Ministry of Transportation, to see if we could get some more money funding from the capital submission to build a permanent, storage shed, 40 by 40 storage shed. The original building that was done before in the sketch by Green Galloway came in at 800,000. So we scrapped that and did a temporary storage and a temporary, or not a temporary, but a new cruise quarters. This building here would be 40 by 40. The ministry has agreed to pay 80% of whatever it costs to build it. So the estimate came in at 180,000. So the ministry would put up, if we spent 180,000, they would put up 144,000. For 40 by 40 building, it would be heated, insulated, a place to put the township tractor in and store all the parts for the ferry plus the fluids. The thing is we have to come up with the money first and then they refund us in 25. Right now, we don't have any place to store. The fluids are being stored off-site because it's not heated. I've talked to Vanessa about this and, we'll definitely have to go into deeper discussion on it. I think it's a great investment for what it's gonna cost. Would, want council support.
Madam Mayor, if I may through you, Chief. With the new, transportation payments through T-Pond beginning in April 1st of this year,
Yes.
would we still have to wait till 2025 to receive that? Or would it be ongoing throughout?
That's what I was told at first. Now, I don't know if that changes with this new payment. We'll find that out in the meeting we're having next week with Chairman Woodman. So, with the minister.
Question, Councillor Jablonski?
So, thanks, Madam Mayor, this is going on Simple Island, and it's 40, good sized building. This-
40 by 40 by 14. Everything's in there, comes complete. I mean, that's even doing, this is just the one company doing everything.
Was that rest full, this is a whole 9 yards of one package.
Yeah, done. Plus it gives us storage too for a tractor or something.
Yeah, so we can use this for other than just.
Oh, yeah, we'll have 20% invested in it too, so
Excellent,
we'll be allowed to use it for,
and 80% coverage by town, by MTR,
by MDO.
I love those coverages. That's not fair, thanks.
Councillor Holton?
I'm for it, I just think we'll have to have further discussion
Yeah.
at budget meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Directly?
So the tractors, that's do roads? That's fine.
Yeah, they do the roads, keep the boat.
And the other stuff is just marine oils and stuff for the.
Yeah, right now it's stored down off-site,
Extra cable or
Yeah.
whatever.
and anything that should be stored in the heat is stored in Kingston at MDO.
And the building won't be there long. Oh, the other main building. So that's
Yeah,
come from it down.
yeah, so
We
it's,
get here to go there.
Yeah.
To fix them. Yeah, that's.
Councillor Saunders?
No question, man.
Okay. I think it sounds like a good deal, and that one question came to mind though, and it's nice that it's heated. Can we also, at some point, engage in a discussion with them that it could be used in emergency services?
that was brought up to me through the electricians. Give me a price on the electrical, so we put enough in there for the electrical that yes, we could put a generator on there. So
Okay.
that could be
Okay, and
something that could be looked into.
okay, now the second piece of that. Some rudimentary air conditioning in case we get hit by a heat dome.
Yeah. I'm sure something like that could be looked into too.
Because it seems like an opportune time now to actually get ahead of the game.
After that,
Hey. Well done, and I look
Thank you.
forward to hearing, potentially the changing of funding. That might be
Yes.
quicker, would be really advantageous.
yes, that will be nice too.
That would be nice. Okay, so the motion is that the Wolf Island Fire and Rescue Report, file number FI 001-24, Simple Island Capital Submission Overview be received and filed for information, and further that council consider the township's portion of the capital funding in the amount of 40,000 to be included in the 2024 budget discussions. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, now we have Public Works report. I'm gonna move for a seconder regarding PW 001-24 Howe Island, NG 911 Fuller Road report. And move in a second. Councilor Ackley and Councilor Sons. Okay. Chief Quinn?
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, this is really an update on an ongoing project that's been happening for several months, working with the residents in this particular area, Fuller Road on Howe Island. Part of the, it's called NG 911, so the new generation 911 updates. We're needing to verify all of the 911 or civic address signs. And we have discovered in that particular area of Fuller Road, there's a huge drift that has occurred in terms of how signs are positioned, how signs were assigned. And so working with the residents there and unfortunately what really reinforced this need is there's been a number of emergency calls in that location where emergency services have had to search to find these properties. We partnered with the residents, brought them to the fire station, did a tabletop exercise, and then partnered with the Frontenac County GIS team. And they've done a visit to Howe Island. We went together, and we have come to what we believe to be a final recommendation, which we would like to bring back to the April council meeting on Howe Island. It just allows those residents to maybe participate if they wish to. But there's a final recommendation coming back. It'll involve some minor laneway name changes in one instance. Why is this? It's part of a township owned road as well, which is Fuller Road, and then we'll need some minor adjustments in terms of the section of Fuller Road that runs to the west and giving that a name, Fuller Road West. So I won't get into all the detail, but that's the gist of this. And we'd like to, that's the update, and we'll bring the final recommendation to the April meeting.
Okay. Any questions, Councillor Bonnicky?
Actually, more of a comment, thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I've actually had a recent experience going down one of these lanes, like this picture you showed, the 5 or 6 emergency numbers clustered in one post. He went down the lane, and none of those houses were actually marked corresponding to these numbers, so no one, which house should it? So I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Anything to do with that, I can see EMS pulling their hair out. If they're trying to get to a house in time, they don't know which one it is, so I see your thoughts. Sorry, I'm like.
Okay, Councillor Hall?
No, I agree with Mike. I think it's a great project, cleaned up.
Okay, Councillor Arthur?
Again, I just say Mike's doing a great job cleaning up our island one section at a time. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Councillor Saunders?
No comment, then.
Okay, is that the only place on Howe Island that we have this issue?
No, so Madam Mayor, we are working away we found a few other locations. This one is going first, honestly, because it was requested by the residents themselves. And as a result of 3 very serious calls that police, fire, and ambulance. When I say fire, I've lived there all my life, and I'm telling you, I was lost. So this one's going first, and we, through the county GIS team, and myself, have identified a couple of others, smaller, not as grand as this one. And we'll work towards cleaning that up.
Okay, and is this governed by legislation at the provincial level for an emergency? I was under the impression it was.
Yeah, there's a provincial standard as well as municipal standard, so the municipality has a bylaw that was done many years ago when the 911 system came into play. And what we've discovered is that some of the principles, we drifted from the principles. And so you end up where numbers got issued and now they're out of sequence. Lanes are usually, identified as a lane and reserved for private lanes, but we have municipal roads that are actually called lanes as well. So there's been a drift. And so in looking at the new new generation 911 requirements, we need to meet those, provide those updates, have that completed by 2026. Some of these things are starting to come to surface, and that's why it's in our face at this point. But the answer to your question is yes, so provincial as well as municipal regulation.
Well, my follow-up to that is, given it's an island, it's not as if we're tackling Peel region or anything. Is it not reasonable to try to get it cleaned up in one fell swoop?
And that's been our effort, but the interesting thing is we encounter different challenges. So for example, there's a couple of properties even in this Fuller Road area that do not have registered deeds to get to the property, and the properties are water access only. So the rules of the game in terms of how you give a number to a water access only property is different. So now that creates, a bit of a challenge in terms of how we manage that. And again, the county GIS team have been helpful. Very helpful.
Sounds bizarre that somebody would have been given a building permit with water only access when you're on that size of an island. I can see it.
Yeah, and so when you get property owners coming with deeds in hand, and it was quite an exercise. They were all well behaved and nobody received a detention, but the class was a little tense at one point. Because if you don't have a deed to cross my property, but yet you have a cottage. And the person saying, I don't need a deed because I only get to that cottage because it's water access. Okay, that's all fine. We're not gonna wade into the weeds of land disputes. All we're simply saying is you need to have a number assigned, and if you have an emergency, how do we find you? And yeah, so these are the things that we're encountering.
I got a question, since we happen to have some experts here from planning. Is there a method to get any of that corrected? Because I can't see loading a fire truck onto the barge and bringing it over to try to put a fire level in ambulance. This seems
If it's an
bizarre.
existing lot of record and it was always a water, we would, there are very specific rules. We want to create a new water access lot now. As for fixing something, like that, I mean, the easiest fix is for them to come in and, try and get an easement across a neighboring property and get in. But the person whose land you're crossing has to be the one that applies for that for you.
So there's no hammer that can be.
There's no, we
safe
have no,
access.
it's historic and it's why people wonder why we have certain planning rules to do things a certain way. It's so that we don't, because we've dealt with all this historic stuff that comes up that's just rather nightmarish and we'd rather not see it happen again. But because it's an existing lot of record, we have no legal mechanism to make them change it. Now, if they came forward and they wanted to do something different with their property, they wanted to rezone it, they want, there might be, that might trigger something for us to say, okay, the only way we would approve this is if you get an easement to the lane so that there's proper, like, legal on the ground access. But if there's an existing cottage and they're just living in the cottage, there's really nothing we can do.
And for the record, I mean, this is where, we're trying to be very, very careful because there's been some challenges in terms of right of ways and that kind of thing between property owners, which dates back 25, 30, 40 years ago. So that's a mess. We as a municipality want to stay clear of, unless there is some mechanism to do this, but at this point, we're talking about giving them a number and how does that fit in the big picture.
Okay, and you said that our township road, Fuller Road, but I see a locked gate. Is that private property when we're talking about a locked gate? We haven't got a locked gate on township road, have we?
It's where Fuller Road ends, and then you continue on down this laneway, which is the private portion. So again, I think we'll be in a better position in, at the next meeting, to provide a map and to provide the concrete recommendations and then the rationale for it. Because we don't want to, in an attempt to fix the problem, we don't want to create a bigger problem. So let me answer your question. The answer is where the gate is located is not municipally owned. That is where the municipal property stops.
That's where these 6 properties are on the other side of that gate.
Correct.
We're not really fixing the problem if we can't get through the gate.
Yeah, the gate's not locked. It's there. You just gotta go through the property owner that they live back there, go through that gate, open and close it because there's lots of horses and stuff.
Okay, so an emergency vehicle. 10 minutes.
Yeah, no problem.
Just for idea of scope, Chief Hawkins, do we have a similar problem in areas on Wolf?
Not a problem with that. Like I said, we do have some numbers that are confused and mixed up, but I've been talking to Marcel about that. We have, one spot at the highway where all the signs are gone. So they have to all be replaced.
Okay, so you're on the case.
We've been talking about Marcel and he,
Sounds good, Mike, because especially when you're talking about emergency services, it shouldn't be a crapshoot as to
well, I'm
where
gonna do
you're headed.
first and then we'll get from.
That's ridiculous. All right, well, thank you very much for that update. Very good it is. So, the motion is that the Public Works Report PW 001-24 Kyle Island Public Works Operations be received and filed for information. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, and have another, which is PWCEMC -001-24 Howe Island, April the 8th of 2024. Total eclipse. Can I have a mover in a second? Councilor Saunders, Councilor Atkins. Okay. And I believe Chief Quinn.
So through you, Madam Mayor, this is really just more or less to assure the community, that, we're watching the situation as it gets closer, the total eclipse that's going to occur on April the 8th. I think it's important to say to the public, like, we're not turning a blind eye to this, I guess. It's that we're watching it, we're participating at the provincial tables, we're taking the lead in terms of taking the direction from some of the recommendations from other ministries in terms of how this gets managed. You're gonna hear lots of municipalities really, ratcheting up, doing things like, implementing their emergency plans and staffing up their fire halls, and it goes on and on. Those are what it seemed to be areas whereby which they're expecting a huge number of people to arrive and observe and watch this event. Hotels are booked solid in the urban areas, et cetera, et cetera. The point here is when we look at and assess, Frontenac Islands and what might we encounter, the risks are really at this point quite low. We're not gonna ignore this, but we'll pay attention to this. Some of the bullet points in the report speak to, concern around roads being blocked and highways being closed, and it's gonna impact emergency services, et cetera, et cetera. That may occur in the urban areas, but I don't see, based on our assessment and our participation to date, that this is going to be a huge risk event to Frontenac Island. Pay attention. The health unit's primary message is, don't stare directly at the sun. It's what your mother told you many years ago not to do. Don't do it. Again, I'm not minimizing this, but I don't want this to be something that the public maybe didn't pay attention to. We're paying attention.
Okay, Councilor Flanagan. Any questions?
Yeah, no, I just again, I comment on, I'm a little bit gobsmacked, but the concern about this, event. I mean, to me, it's like going nighttime or waking up early in the morning, watch the sunrise. I mean, a little bit longer perhaps, but, yeah, I'm just blown away that people treat this as such a historic event.
Councilor Holden?
No.
Councilor Atkins?
Again, we're talking about something that our parents should be telling us about, right? Not council.
Councilor Saunders? I do have a concern that the people that are running our boats in particular have to keep their eyes open when they're driving these boats now. And the danger of eye damage and that is actually quite real in that. I know that Cape Vincent, just to the south of us, is actually preparing very significantly in that for an influx of people and making a celebration of it and everything else. So when you think of it, the schools have closed because they had that concern as well, and that including school bus drivers and that. I have more concern than you guys, just because when you think back of, you know, the Trump squinkly eyes, and that it's not unusual that people will be doing that. Whether we can do a thing about it, I don't know. But I am cautious, especially in making our township ferries run during that time, and that if there's a meeting, which of them, have you equipped them with the glasses?
So
That would have been proactive.
we won't, so through you, Madam Mayor, I won't speak for the Ministry of Transportation, but they are advising us in our last touch point meeting that they'll take measures to try to reduce risk. What those are gonna be, but we're certainly not clear about that. And they, as the employer, will work with their union, I guess, to sort out how do we look after our employees. We'll take a few of their points and apply it to our municipally run ferries. But part of it is education and all of that, and making sure that they're, you know, that everybody's up to date in terms of what not to do. And then the county of Frontenac, through the Ministry of Transportation as well, as they're gonna take some measures, but we're not sure what that is.
They did say they thought the serious part of it, the Wolf Island Ferry would be shut down for 4 minutes. There's just a certain part that is, I forget what.
3 minutes.
Yeah, something like 3 minutes.
Would it be prudent maybe to have some of the solar glasses available for our staff?
We could.
Since this is the historic aspect, that we are in that big total eclipse
Yeah.
piece, and that whereas other eclipse and that probably less, but we've never experienced anything like this.
You would like us to buy glasses for our ferry staff, that's no problem.
I think that I think that would be prudent that to have them available. I'd rather be over cautious than under cautious and find if there's a problem. But that's my suggestion.
Yeah, I could just comment from the health unit representative who sits at the provincial table there, you know, one of the things they're saying is if you're going to observe, because you're very interested in this and you're gonna watch the moon crossover, if you're watching it deliberately, then you should have glasses.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're simply functioning outside and don't stare at the sun direct, and everything else will be fine. So it's, you know, to me, I'm not sure how many people even just on a regular day would stare at the sun directly for. But my point is that, you know, hearing their recommendations, we apply those recommendations, and use some good common sense and.
Okay. All right, so the motion is, unless there's any further discussion, okay, that the Public Works Report, PWCENC -001-24, solar eclipse operation report be received in the file for information. All those in favor? Carried. All right. Now we're at the planning proposals for change of fees for planning applications. And who's going to be speaking on that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's for you. I don't have a formal presentation prepared. I did present last year about the research that we have done and the need to update the fees. The main question that I received from members of council was, could we charge more? And page 3 of the staff report does outline some of the minor increases that we recommended. But essentially, at the end of the day, you can't. It's not a for-profit initiative. It has to be cost recovery. So there is the draft bylaw attached this time, as well as an updated chart at the back that shows all the various comparisons. The other 3 townships did update theirs as well, and the county has updated their fee bylaw as well. So not a lot of change from when you last saw this, but other than having the actual draft of the bylaw in front of you this time. But happy to take any questions.
Okay, Councilor Mr. Bonneton.
Thanks, Sonia. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, judging this, we haven't updated these prices in 15 years.
That's
Yeah, I think it's time to update the prices. I agree.
Maybe Councillor Holden?
Yeah. I remember your presentation and you had good reasons for it, so we need to recover our costs. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ackley?
I agree also.
Councillor Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. So again, thank you for doing this. There's obviously put a lot of research into it. So a couple questions. One, an observation, first of all, it's even recommended proposed fees. I think almost without exception, I guess it's fall below your research levels. Is that fair?
They do a little bit. Some of the regions we looked at were larger and, you know, we looked
Yeah.
at Easton as well. So trying to strike a balance between sort of what that average was, but what we know other townships in this
Yeah.
region are charging, just in terms of fairness, and also knowing the amount of time that it takes us to process simple applications, right? So.
Second one, if I understand the chart properly, you're adding some fees, right? So-
That, through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. There are a number of blanks right now. So there are a number of things that, that cost, you time in terms of the planning services that are not being recovered. So we are looking at adding those as well. So an example would be minimum distance separation calculations when anybody is looking to construct a barn. There is a specific, set of calculations that we have to, and software that we have to run from the province, and information that we need to get from the property owner. So it does take a couple of hours to do that exercise. So we feel that, you know, the applicant can hire somebody else to do it on their behalf, but it's often easier just to have the planner do it. But again, that is additional time that time should be, covered by the applicant because it's needed for their application.
Yeah, but then maybe another third question. So this is cost recovered. In your, use the term, first of all, we're here. And you're looking forward in terms of calculations, will this recover the majority of the costs?
That is our hope. It's really hard. We're not like consultants that we don't charge on per application. You charge a set rate for an application and we track our hours. So the amounts that we have come up with, we feel are reasonable for the average uncomplicated file. What we have included new here that we've done for the other townships as well, is we've included a chart where that provides, I would say, a sort of a high-end limit of the number of hours that we would expect to spend on a type of file. And now if we go over that, the municipality will have the ability on a per hourly basis for any extra, because we track by the hour for our work per file, you can charge back that extra time. So I think a consent is something that was at 10 to 15 hours or something like that. And then if you go over that, say you end up using, you know, an extra 3 hours, you can charge them an hourly rate back to the applicant, because every application, there's an indemnity clause that they have to sign, basically saying, you know, we're paying our application fee, but any additional expenses incurred on the township, they are responsible for.
And last question, if I could, do you have any idea of how short we were in previous years from actual cost versus what we recovered?
Like I said, it's difficult to say because we don't charge the applicant, but, and in terms of simple math, in terms of what I was working through here, so last year, we probably got about $99,700 in costs. Sorry, in terms of income, but then if we look at 77% of our hours were dedicated to development applications. If you take 77% of what you're paying the planning services this year, that's a shortfall of about $46,000. So the hardest one to cover for is pre-application and inquiries, right? We're not charging anything right now, which makes it a really expensive free service. So we're looking at adding in a fee of $100 for simple applications like consents and minor variances, and $300 for major things like a rezoning. And again, probably not 100% cost recovery, but what we've noticed that does in terms of the other townships when we institute that fee is you lose some of the tire kickers. So that you start getting the people who are like, well, I kind of sort of think that maybe someday I might like to do this, or I'm maybe thinking of buying a property and so if they're really serious, then they're gonna pay the $100 to have the solid conversation and get the advice. And they're gonna put a little bit more time and thought into their inquiry and whether or not they want to make the inquiry. So we're not gonna charge for every phone call, but somebody who has a major, application plan, they need to sit down with the planner, that's when it's charged. So.
And just last point, so, I won't quote you on the $40,000 for us, but currently that shortfall will be picked up by existing taxpayers.
That's correct. So anything that is not, and that's the idea behind the fee, is that the planning applications are for individual properties and property owners. They benefit just that one property. So it should be a user fee, because when those fees aren't covered by the user, they are picked up by the general levy. So the idea is to cover more by user fees and less under the general levy.
Okay. And let's go into your comparison chart. I think you're actually very right still. Phillips Frontenac and their new fees is higher in almost everything compared to us. With very few holes that they aren't charging for, and that, for example, their official plan amendments, we're suggesting $300, they already charge $400. Official plan amendment, OPA, you're suggesting $2,500, they're charging $2,806. Quite frankly, I think we should be going to the South Frontenac level, not just in comparison of North and Central. And if we're going to do it, we might as well do it to the level that gives us the best cost recovery. And when I think about the time involved for you to even come to the island and additional expense, I think we're very light in that. After building without a permit, you're suggesting $2,300, South Frontenac charges $3,700. Wouldn't this be the right time for us to go higher?
Madam Mayor, it's entirely your choice. I mean, we've done the research, but at the end of the day, this is your bylaw. I have no professional recommendation when it comes to fees. It's entirely what you want to do. The only thing that I would ask is that today you pass something. Because when I was here last time, we're terribly busy. And if you send me away to do more research, I'll be honest, it'll be another 6 months at least before I'm back, and you won't be getting any revenue. So my recommendation is, if you want a different number in the bylaw today, then just change it today. Or at least pass the draft that's in front of you today and then revisit it and increase the fees at a later date. But it is my sincere hope that you do pass something today, because you do need to do more, I think, in terms of cost recovery. Yes.
So I guess my question is then to council on that, if they have an appetite to accept an amendment to this, to move, where the fees are currently lower from South Frontenac, if we can move to the South Frontenac price. Where if we don't have a fee exactly the same as South Frontenac, we don't worry about it. But it's quite clear in here that there is at least 2 dozen, it looks like, fees that are lower for us than at the South Frontenac level. And I think that if we're going to do this, we might as well do it at that level at this point in time.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the only thing I would suggest is just to be careful, because we've broken out things like consents are a bit different than South Frontenac. So it's not always going to be a simple switch.
That's why I said if there's a gap in there, not to worry about it. In other words, accessory uses of the principal use in non-waterfront properties, we charge $700. They don't have a fee in there, so I haven't worried about that. But I am concerned with almost everything else in that there's a lot of difference in it. So if we are still sticking uncovered fees on the backs of the existing residents, that's not right. So the fact that South Frontenac has, significantly higher, like $500 difference in after building without a permit, ours would be $1,700, theirs is $2,206. And that, to me, I'd like to know the appetite of this council on that. If you still want to go to just match North and Central, or if you want to go to the higher bar at South Frontenac, because quite frankly, well, it's right here, and we can amend it today. The councillor active.
So if I might, you're proposing an amendment?
I'm proposing an amendment to move the corresponding fees charged by South Frontenac that are identical in description to be our new fee rather than the ones proposed. If you want, I can take a minute and go through it, but basically the difference is $100 on the very first fee, We get to the official OPA line, and that's over $300, $306 difference. Zoning bylaw amendment is $164 difference. The, under the zoning bylaw amendment, after building without a permit, we're proposing 2,300, they do 3,700. And this is a significant difference. And it just goes on and on, so the fact that the other two townships are doing a lesser amount, I would see it going the higher one shot. You think it would slow up our development? Councillor Hall.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think we have an obligation to try and keep these fees as low as we can and still recover costs. So I think that Sonia's done the research and this is gonna get our cost recovered, and I think that's where we need to be. I don't think we need to.
Councillor Flanagan.
Yeah, I'll be honest, thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm fine with proposed fees, and right there is a large boost. To all the building permit requirements, so I'm happy with those fees. At this point.
Councillor Ackley.
And again, I think they've done their homework. And I'm not saying all these numbers are correct, because I am building a building and I know what it's gonna cost to build the building. And to get a permit, and if I need a minor variance, some of the numbers aren't correct here, just 100% from what I was told by our building inspector. So I believe we're just gonna follow this direction today instead of moving on. To change this whole, and we'll be here for another 2 hours.
So are you declaring a pecuniary interest?
No, not really. I'm no pecuniary interest. Fees are fees, and if I have to pay them, I pay them, whether it's this or this. I'm one of the people that don't care. Let's just say that money's not my problem. My problem is looking after everybody, not me. So I have no pecuniary interest at all.
Okay. Councillor Saunders, anything else?
As for the previous comments, I think we got what was presented, and as, almost like the manager. And so noted, we can always revisit this in 6 months or something like that, so I think for now we move forward.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I would just point out too that the new bylaw notes that each year in January, that the fee should be indexed, right? So rather than letting them sit for another 10 or 15 years, you would do an incremental increase based on the consumer price index. And so you would still see an incremental increase each year. But yeah, it really, you should be looking at your fees each year, and if there's another time to, we can always report back on to what the numbers were for 2024. Kind of like we are today for 2023, and have another look. But, okay, it's entirely up to you.
Okay. I'm gonna be doing this as a recorded vote, Madam Clerk, that should I get a mover and seconder ahead of time, please? I have a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Jablonski and Councillor Halton. Pass it over.
Moved by Councillor Jablonski, seconded by Councillor Holton, that council adopted the new tariff of fees bylaw planning applications as outlined in the draft bylaw and attachment 1 to the planning report. Councillor Ackley. Councillor Holton. Councillor Jablonski.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Saunders.
In favor.
Mayor Greenwood Spears.
Opposed.
Motion is carried. Thank you.
Okay. Now we're on to provincial ministries at the table, emergency management. No, sorry.
No.
No, benefit. Right. The planning report consent application, D 1423 W Green. Yeah. Yes. Okay. And in that planning consent report, the report back from our information presented during a closed meeting that's been discussed with the clerk, that the lawyer has clarified that the definition of the lot was as presented by the planning department at the January 8th meeting. Okay. So. Who would like to speak to that? Councillor Hall?
I would like to amend this to say be approved instead of be refused. Because obviously if we vote on it and don't vote to approve it, it will be refused.
Maybe if I read the motion, we're gonna move her in a second right now. I'll read the motion that's presented.
And then we can.
Then we can discuss it. Okay, can I have a mover and a second? Mr. Acton and Councilor Sons. And the motion would be that the consent application B 14-23W for the property located at Park Lot 15, concession 5, Wolf Island Township, Frontenac Island 60, and the fourth line for the severance of one new lot be refused, and that the clerk shall issue the notice, spelling on that, of decision in accordance with the requirements in the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision that to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. That, so we'll open it to the discussion. Councilor Hall.
So I would like to amend that to say be approved. Because obviously if we vote on it and we don't approve it, then it's refused. And further to that, I think we have got all the information, we beat this up as much as we can. Doesn't fit neatly in the box, but obviously I think we need to reapprove it.
Okay, do you have a seconder for that motion? Councilor Acton? Okay, we'll open up to discussion. Councilor Jablonski?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. A comment as well, I mean. If we go by this drawing here, we already exceeded the amount of property for that lot already. I thought the idea of actually Marysville expansion plan, Wolf House, and turning more people here for more homes here. I'm in favor of passing this, like, let's get some more homes built. This is a family homestead type of build, but I don't see why we're doing this.
I don't see why we're denying. Okay, Councilor Acton?
Again, I support it. I totally believe that, they should be allowed to put another, dwelling there, and especially when it comes to family, that's serious stuff, and you're an islander, you're an islander. We can't support the islanders, who can we support?
Councilor Saunders?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. By way of history, when this came forward earlier, there was a discussion about the definition of lot. We've now gotten legal advice that says the planning department's interpretation of the term lot is correct. Therefore, I would be in favor, I'm not in favor of amending it. I think the risk associated with violating or going against or changing how we're interpreting our zoning bylaw brings a lot of risk associated with it, and therefore I would not be in favor of changing. I would not be in favor of the amendment.
It's a difficult piece. And that's because of the slippery slope that can be opened with this. But there's competing arguments on this side, and one of them is that we are on an island. And it has been presented, and I'm gonna say in good faith, by the people that this building is to be for the care and consideration of the elderly family member. And under no illusion that at some point down the line, that it would probably be sold off as a big asset. Because we can consider it a separate piece of land, and that said, we don't have anything other than a retirement home, which is not a supportive services type of building, and we've lost enough islanders over to the mainland trying to get reasonable support service brought in place. I have to say that, given the weight of it, I would vote in favor of it as well. But I'm also aware that potentially it could be complained about, if not by the neighbors. Yeah, but at the county level, because it goes against the official plan. And the idea actually is not just to bring people to the island, but to bring them to the island in areas of controlled growth. This isn't controlled growth, but it also doesn't impact agricultural land. It's already a residential lot. It's a double-sized residential lot. And I know that there's many other islanders that own double-sized residential lot, and that's that slippery slope that we get into. That said, weighing the reality of getting any health services over to the community, I think has to outweigh and take the risk of the slippery slope that may be used against us, but we've been assured also that it doesn't necessarily set a precedence that will be held to us. So for this, I'm going to ask for a recorded vote for June. Is there any further discussion?
So are we voting with the amendment in place?
Oh, we have to do the amendment piece first, correct? Okay, can I write the amendment piece on here? Or do you want to write it? Let me go. So the recorded video, right?
Do you want to do the amendment as recorded?
No. All right, so we got we'll do the. No, we'll do the amendment just for the. Do it all.
So this vote is for the amendment. Moved by Councillor Holton, seconded by Councillor Ackley, that in the first paragraph, the last sentence, replace the wording be refused and change it to be approved. Councillor Ackley,
In favor.
Councillor Holton,
In favor.
Councillor Jablonski,
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Saunders,
Not in favor.
Mayor Greenwood Spears,
In favor.
so the amendment is passed. We go back to the main motion, moved by Councillor Ackley, seconded by Councillor Saunders, that consent application number B-14-23-W for the property located at Park Lot 15, Concession 5, Wolf Island, Township of Frontenac Islands, 60 Fourth Line Road, for the severance of one new lot be approved, and that the clerk shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. Councillor Ackley, are you in favor or against? Sorry.
Against.
So, we amended the main motion to approve as opposed to refuse.
Correct.
So
So I'm in favor.
Counselor Holton,
In favor.
Counselor Tulowitzki,
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Saunders,
No.
Mayor Greenwood Spears,
In favor.
motion's carried. My apologies for any confusion.
No confusion, thank you for getting that straight. Okay, now. The administration report number 18004-24 draft personnel policies. Yeah. Oh, okay. Request for a 5-minute break. We will return at 11:45. 11:45. I'm sorry.
Wait till,
How?
Yeah.
Toasty warm.
Oh.
It is long.
Yeah, I don't have an eye for that either, yeah, so I hope that are. What you think? Oh, yeah, I should be.
There you are.
Okay, on the right up.
See, no,
Okay. That's what you're thinking, hope so. Line up, put the phone on the camera, so.
Oh.
Yeah, people, you did a good thing. The rules, yes, but you did a good thing. Yeah. Yeah, the right words too.
Want to try to run it through?
Well, I gotta try. This works.
I do it there.
Right words.
Other debate, you know.
I think we should accept all the.
So I wouldn't be opposed to it, it's my council members and mayor on this side of it.
Oh.
No, we all our meetings are in Alana.
That one's not even needed, look at, Hawkins got more control in their door. You got your hurt, there's a draft coming from there.
It's over.
Oh, well, maybe they should set it or something.
Well, what's there?
And they can max it. And then I was like, so I couldn't find it.
Here's 9-1.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think.
And this is all. At 11:45.
I don't.
That's right.
Gee, Bill, 1 minute.
Sure. Right, so it's the I'm not asking my understanding.
Let me know however. Bill had the car so high, I had a little limit there. He's wrapped up.
They don't have all these extra insulation.
Okay. Yeah. Councilor Jablonski. Thank you. Meeting of the township is resumed at 11:45. Please take your seats or take yourselves outside.
Okay. Now, next is administrative report number AD 004-24, draft personnel policy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as council may recall, staff had presented a draft personnel policy in November of last year. It was quite an extensive document. It did receive, first and second reading. However, staff have felt that, the attached, revised policy would be more in keeping with the municipality of our size. So, if any, member of council has any questions or concerns, or if they have any feedback, please let me know.
Okay, I'll ask for a mover and seconder now. And then we'll talk about that. We have a mover or a seconder regarding the pay, Councilor Saunders. Councilor Holton, did I see?
Yep.
Okay, now discussion. Councilor Devonigan?
That's next, and I hear this one. You can see, this is still draft form. We'll go through the, our relations lawyers and labor lawyers to make sure she's all dot size, these are cross whole thing, or how's it, what's the next stage after draft? This is the question.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Dwanaki. So yes, if council has any questions or concerns or any changes they would like to see, please forward them to me. I can get it incorporated. I'll bring it back to the next meeting of the council. If there's nothing, any further amendments, I can send it off to our HR lawyers for a final review before bringing back to council for the approval of the bylaw.
I haven't gone to all 133 pages of it, but I have actually hit all the higher points. I mean, if you're saying it's in line with our side of the municipality and our team, I'm good with going to third reading. I mean, it seems pretty straightforward, good policy. I know you and the previous CEO have been working on this, so. Yeah, looks good, as long as our labor lawyers like it, anybody's yet to say it's fun, I'm good to proceed.
Thank you. Councilor Holton?
Yeah, I'm good to proceed with it too.
Okay, Councilor Ackley?
I'm good, I just, I would want some clarification on some, couple of things in there. I think it's Tuesday when we can discuss that.
So send them off.
I just sent them off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Councilor Saunders?
Yeah, I would, I'll forward my comments to you. Aggregate in order.
Okay. And I did read through all of it and have sent my comments into the clerk and that, and overall, I appreciate the effort that's been put in. Do we need to have, since we had a first and second reading on the original draft and that's been withdrawn? And that, how do we effectively fill the 800 page one? That's,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So seeing that it did not actually receive third and final passage, it's not technically on the books. So
okay, so, off the books. Okay, and this isn't asking for first, second, or any other passage because it's just a draft. at this
not
point.
at today's meeting, that's correct. Madam Mayor.
Okay, so there are, when you do have time to read through it all, there are some significant changes and some that I'm proposing, but not that many, but some I just want to have more clarification so I can have discussion with the clerk, and I'd be interested to see what other things jump out, and is there any problem with us sharing? Okay, so there can be a summary of what the items are that are questioned. And hopefully we'll be able to get that brought forward maybe in April, if not May, sooner rather than later. Yes. And I agree, it is a much better size than the previous one, and certainly more relevant. Okay, so with that, the motion is that the administration report. Pardon me, there is no talking. That the administration report AD 004-24 regarding draft personnel policy be received. And that further that staff finalize the draft policy and bring back to the next meeting of council for approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Now, we're down to the point where we're at the action items required. There we have. My motion for. Medical clinic support for rural, remote, and isolated areas, and I'll pass this over then to Councillor Saunders. Yes, please. You there? Unless this is for the school, is it? Oh, sorry, I'm just like.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Madam Mayor provided notice of motion, I believe, at the last meeting. This is now on our agenda. So the motion is, whereas the Township of Frontenac Island recognizes the tremendous asset the medical clinic is to residents of Wolf Island, and whereas the township supports the efforts of the dedicated volunteers who contribute their time and effort to provide residents and visitors with access to medical, laboratory, and other services, and whereas the Frontenac doctors have ceased providing these services to the residents of the island, and now therefore it be resolved that the Township of Frontenac Island supports the medical clinic board's efforts to have Wolf Island designated a rural, remote, and isolated area given our water-only access with limited ferry capacity. Explicitly to seek funding to secure the services of nurse practitioner or a physician as needed in order to provide services to Wolf Island residents and visitors. So I need a seconder. I need someone move it. Councilor LaFlante is moving it. Need a seconder for that?
No, I'm.
Oh, sorry. So,
I'm right. Yes.
that's why you're here.
Yes.
So correct me, please.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. The motion is, Madam Mayor's, so we would just be looking for a seconder for that motion.
Thank you for the clarification. So Councilor LaFlante is seconded.
Okay.
Discussion. Madam Mayor, this is yours. Do you have a comment?
Just that, usually rural, remote, and isolated is typically used in northern areas. However, given our situation with both water impediment, we are geographically isolated, we are certainly rural, there's no argument in that. And we are isolated in that because of also the unreliability that we run into with our ferry service. That if we can get that designation, it would help to support the application for funding for the nurse practitioner in the long-term more than pilot project. So it costs us nothing and it shows great support for the medical community and the committee that has been doing so much to try to bring better services here to the island. I hope everybody supports it.
Councilor LaFlante, any comment?
We need nurse practitioner, or we need a physician. This is a great step to get there. Can I say, we need
Councilor Dalton?
I think anything we can do, and I think it's a great step to help our healthcare profile.
That's happening.
Oh, yeah, I think that people need help and should have something.
And I support those for your comments. Madam Mayor, any other comment? No? Call vote then. All those in favor? Motion passed. We're very efficient. So the next item on the agenda, my apologies here, was this a notice of motion or was this?
This is the full motion. It was given the notice before.
Okay, thank you very much. So, the motion is whereas the Canadian Renewable Energy Corporation, CREC, has entered into the Renewable Energy Supply 2 contract dated November the 21st, 2005 with the Ontario Power Authority for the supply of electricity from renewable generating facilities from the island of Wolf Island Wind Plant. And whereas CREC is a wholly owned subsidiary of Canadian Hydro Developers, Inc., CHD, and has agreed to fully and irrevocably guarantee all of the obligations owed by CREC to the municipality under this agreement. And whereas part 5, which states amenity fees, section 35A and B, which stipulates both the fixed rate under Schedule A, we multiply by the number of turbines, but also the percentage of revenue rate for the year as set out in Schedule A, multiplied by the gross annual revenue for the year, and whereas Part 5, Sections 39 of the agreement, for the purpose of calculating the amount in Section 35B, CREC shall provide to the municipality by March 31st of the following year a statement of the gross annual revenue for the year, together with a certificate signed by the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Financial Officer of CREC, confirming that the information contained in the statement is true and accurate. And whereas the Township of Frontenac Island has not been in receipt of this aforementioned information since approximately 2016. That's moved by the mayor, any seconders of that?
There's one, two.
My apologies, continues. Now therefore be resolved that the council direct the CEO clerk to write to CREC and or CHD and request that the signed revenue information be forwarded to us to verify the gross annual revenue as outlined in Part 5, Section 39 of the stated agreement between the Council of Frontenac Islands and CREC and or CHD in order to verify that all agreed upon monies have been omitted and to make the township whole if necessary. That is moved by the agreement Spears, that needs second. Seconded by Councilor Blancy. Mayor, would you like to speak to your motion?
Okay, as outlined, there is an agreement that was signed in 2005. And for the first few years, the company had provided the indicated information for some inexplicable reason. They stopped and that. I want to make sure that if we are missing, because we are currently being paid by the per turbine, but there is a clause in there regarding gross revenue. And there's a percentage assigned to that. If there's an opportunity for us to get more funds, I'm all in favor of it. So I think at the very least, we have to get this cleaned up because it is a signed agreement. And we might end up with a bit more money, or we're gonna at least get a verification.
Councilor Blancy, comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Mayor, that we have to look at that shade, strikes CREC and CHG because they are now entities that don't exist any further, but TransAlta is the go-to people here. And even giving names to contact actually, which might have TransAlta recently, other circumstances, but yeah, I'm surprised they actually stopped sending. They should become automatic twice a year. And I'm surprised it stopped. What's 2060? What date was that? I don't know, is that old council or new council or?
Previous council, please.
So I know something happened. It should have been automatic.
Madam Clerk?
They changed it 2019.
I apologize through you, Madam Mayor. I'm gonna say it was 2 councils ago of 2016, and that was the last receipt we have the documentations.
It should have been issued. It should have come automatically.
So, we'll find out if we're in short supply.
Councilor Holland?
Yeah, I think it's fine to ask, we're gonna see necessarily what it needs to be signed, I think what they sent us is fine, it's just information. So, if we just request the information from them, they'll probably forward it to us, I don't see any problem.
Councilor Hammond?
Yeah, if you're gonna make more money. Why not?
Okay, so I also am in favor of this, so. Can we do it, so Councilor Blancy has noted that as an error in the nomenclature. Do we need to change that, or can we just note that?
It's through you, Deputy Mayor. So just for clarifications, it is no longer CREC and CHD. It needs to be replaced with IESO in TransAlta.
It's TransAlta.
Just
I'll
TransAlta.
contact the ISO, make sure the documents are sent to you.
Okay, perfect. So based on that, if, as long as the members of council are okay, I will direct the letter to TransAlta, and we can, scratch that, so we want to initial afterwards.
Okay, so with that minor change, all those in favor? Pass. And I believe, Madam Mayor, I turn the chair back to you.
Okay. Now we have a motion by Deputy Mayor Saunders regarding new development and road repairs. I have a mover and a seconder to bring it to the table. We have a mover is Councillor Saunders and the seconder will be Councillor Acton. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I think this was going to be a notice of motion.
Through you, Madam Mayor. You did a notice of motion at the February meeting for this motion to come forward.
Would you like me to read it or speak?
I can speak to it. Right, so, in our, several council meetings ago, we were talking about a, severance application on Howe Island. And the discussion came up around, road and who's responsible and, what happens if there's damage and things. I bring this forward because previously to that, application, there were comments made to me by people, on Howe Island who saw deterioration of the road based on some renovations and new construction going on. And they asked, who's gonna fix that? When we approached that question to the previous CAO, he said that we would have to have a bylaw in place to put the onus on I'm saying the homeowner, the builder, whatever, that they're responsible for returning the road to its previous condition. So the purpose of my motion is to bring that forward as a recommended bylaw, so we can ensure that roads do not deteriorate based on construction. We put the onus on the developer to repair them. That's one.
Okay, with that, I'm wondering, how can we enforce it or monitor it, or do we have, is it clear enough that we can recover the costs and that? That's just my naivety of it, because it says, where is the cost of returning the roads to the pre-construction will be borne by the taxpayers? Well, we obviously don't want to have that, but I'm just wondering, do we have a set fee and that can we use a prescribed, this is how much damage has been done to the road by this many meters, and this is the fee that we're going to charge to it, or because it can become quite subjective, whether the potholes here before we ever started, et cetera, and that, so I'm just wondering how can we because I'm not opposed to it, I'd like to make sure that they do make the road whole. I just don't know if we have enough detail in this particular bylaw for it. We did the previous CEO that had a great deal of experience in public works, had any suggestion on that, and maybe we have expertise here that can help us on that.
So then, if I can respond to that, I didn't go down level of detail. My assumption would be that, before construction starts, we would have the Public Works Department have a look at it, do an evaluation, a discussion with the contractor, and then following completion of the work, have another review and just return it to the condition it was in. So.
Madam Mayor, if I may, excuse me. So when there's new development, new construction, the homeowner does have to purchase or enter into development services agreement. Based on, don't quote me on this because I'm not 100% sure what the fees are. I believe it's set out. And a portion of those development service charges fees are then allocated, like it goes into a reserve fund, but those reserve funds are apportioned out for the fire services, roads, etc. So I can, if council's interested in pursuing this, I can certainly look into it further with regards to the development charges, what the percentage is, etc., that we can use them for, and bring back a report if council so wishes.
Councillor Dubois, question.
Nope, it makes complete sense to me, not to bring back the wind farm, but the same thing for roads being traveled by trucks, we had to pay a repair fee after the job was done. I'm surprised we don't do for all the contractors.
Okay, Councillor Holton.
I like the idea of it. I think it's gonna be pretty hard to do. given, I mean, the situation on how, I don't know, somebody's. They could travel a lot of roads, and how many roads, how's the roads department gonna evaluate those roads before and after, and I can see it being very difficult to, maybe a set fee for, I'd like to see what's in the development charges.
Councillor Ackland?
Again, I believe it's pretty hard to police the whole road. Rather than just the entranceway to somebody's property. That's where the damage is gonna happen mainly. To police the whole road, because you know how many other trucks went down that road at the same time? And was that guy following rules and regulations that he's only allowed 5-ton per axle? Right now, or do you have 50-ton or 200-ton? I totally understand Mr. Jablonski's, Councilor Jablonski's opinion on the wind turbines with everything. That was a lot of stuff coming. We're talking somebody building a house here and I can't believe they're gonna try to destroy our roads or do anything to our roads. You know, they wanna keep their business going here. And even the homeowner, they got them on back the road, you know, they should be out there trying to clarify. It should be more on the homeowner than us, based on the situation on the road.
I look at it from a larger development perspective, that there could be 100 homes being built in condominium fashion that where there's a lot of travel on the roads that I don't see it really as a one-off for a new home construction that I think we would be able to attribute it to, but if somebody opened up and started having major construction down a dirt road, a gravel road, and it fell apart, and that, so I go back to I think of the roads needs assessment that does have dollar figures associated, at least it's a table that we could utilize and say potentially, this is what will cost for us to rebuild this section of road now, and at least look at that in any specific, and that's where I don't have that expertise yet, if we can put that into a proposal of condominium development type of thing. And that's how I look at it, or if somebody want to open up a gravel pit or something like that, that has heavy trucks coming back and forth on a business basis.
You just don't wanna hinder development, and I think this is just another cost we're throwing at people. You know, if the road's built right, the road shouldn't break. Is the way I look at it.
Thank you, Member. So, thank you for the discussion, because the intent of what I was trying to get at is at the entranceway, not the entire road. When they apply for the entry or whatever, but that section, picking up 50 feet either that section of road is returned to its original condition. Not the entire road to the ferry or whatever, just that immediate area was the intent of the request.
Public Works.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we know of some very real examples that unfolded where, as a result of an accident, a large tractor trailer truck make kind of maneuver and turn on Spithead Road where they unfortunately rolled over the surface treatment. The contractor made a connection to the municipal office, and then together they moved towards making the repair. We were lucky in that instance because the contractor was open and forthright. What I guess I wonder about, and it's really, we're talking about damage to roads. We have a situation on the new asphalt on the North Shore Road that's less than a year old, where as a result of snow plowing, and individuals decided to put snow across the road, which is against the Highway Traffic Act, and rolled up a bit of the new surface treatment. So we're gonna end up where we have damage in multiple spots, unloading of excavators. At the end of the North Shore Road, heading into Burn Point, and it wasn't a week later, after the asphalt went down, and somebody unloaded an excavator. So it's gonna be an interesting challenge, but what we're talking about is damage to roads, and how do we fix that and recover the money if there is damage because of whatever failure to do whatever they need to do, but reduce that risk.
Chief Hawkins. Do you have any input?
No, the same as Mike, with, that sometimes we do have damage from unloading excavators or pushing snow across the road or even farm equipment, somebody drops a disc.
Would it be prudent perhaps to have a report from back to council on that might expand on what could be considered reasonable fees that might be assigned in other locations? Have a more in-depth discussion, because I'm sure we're not the only municipality that has come across something like that. And if there's a mechanism in place that we can recoup the cost of repair of the roads and that, because you're right, it's not always in good faith, people will own up to it, but quite often you can find out exactly how it happened and why it happened to that, and it shouldn't be considered normal wear and tear, than it is something other than.
Then I'd be open to deferring this until we can come back with some more information around the development costs and perhaps some comments from the public works department.
All right, so we'll defer it for now. We don't need to have a vote on that, or do we? We do need to have a vote on it. Okay, so a motion to defer,
And it wouldn't be defer, it would be moved to postpone.
any further discussion on this? Well, I'll keep writing this piece. They have a mover to postpone. Councillor Ackley, seconded Councillor Paul. Who's that? Councillor Ackley is the mover, Councillor Hall second. Thank you. Okay, so we'll do the amendment first. That this matter be postponed to a date specific, the April the 8th of 2024.
So, Madam Mayor, just as I may clarify, it's not an amendment. That is your main motion now, that we're postponing, that's correct.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so all those in, any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, and the aforementioned, we don't feel that, so I just put a line to that. Thank you. Okay, now. Yes. Councillor Duarte.
No, thanks, Madam Mayor. Just one thing before we hit item 8, it's public question period.
Yep.
Just want to make sure you understand it's public question period based on our agenda today. It's turned into a public comment period at one point. So I want to make sure we recognize this is question period. If people want to make their comments, more than happy to write emails and let us know, but I'd rather get questions and comments. Just that's my own feeling.
Madam Mayor, if I may expand on that comment from Councillor Jablonski. That being said, you are correct. And please remember that the Trans Alta items have been removed from the agenda, so there's no questions for that.
Except the motion, that's, yeah. Okay, so keeping that in mind, members of the public, have you got any questions for us regarding the agenda today? Seeing none? Great.
Sorry, online, I don't see any hands raised.
Oh, yes, Ms.
Oh,
Collins,
man.
Is there one? Okay, Elaine Cooperman. Okay, Elaine, we're going to get you voiced. All right, have you got a question?
I do, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My question is regarding the severance of the additional 5th lot. Through you, Madam Mayor, perhaps the clerk can clarify for me. My understanding is that the provincial government passed legislation to permit a maximum of 3 dwellings units on a residential lot. If that's the case, one of which could be a separate dwelling, the other had to be attached to the initial dwelling. If that's the case, was that a possibility for this applicant that they could have just applied for a building permit and put up another dwelling on their lot without having to go to the trouble of severing it and having council not abide by their own policy?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I may, Ms. Coomans, that is a question better asked for our planning department. Unfortunately, they have left. I do recall that they have, the owners with the planning members have reviewed all possibilities, and this was the agreement that between the parties that was brought forward, but certainly we can clarify that and get your answer sent back to you with the planning department.
Thank you. Would you need contact information?
Please.
I can send you that. Thank you.
Councillor Acker?
I think the reason they separated is due to the fact they need a larger tile bed and stuff. Because their tile bed wouldn't carry an addition on the house property. That is submarine there, or a long suite, or whatever they call that.
We, at the very first meeting that we were adamant that they needed to have it separate, rather than just build on the same
Yeah.
lot.
Finance.
Yeah, for finance purposes, et cetera, and that, so I believe the key point was that they didn't want to just build without the severance because of finance and personal reasons in that regard, so. But people that do own a lot, and that you're right, in the new legislation, if they want to build a secondary home and not go through severance, which becomes problematic, I believe that is the case, but we can verify with time. Okay. No other questions? Is there? I can come to the front and state your name and location, please.
Harris on Oak Island, just further to that question, would it be possible? I thought that was a great question. Is it something, will that question be recorded in the minutes that will be shared on the agenda following up so that people have access? That's a great question. And then to have the information follow up, is that something that, is that practice? I'm just understanding.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, sorry, I'm shaking my head.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. So now we'll move on to statement by members. Councilor Blonicky?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Two things, just to update. EMS committee is still working with a part of the Ministry of Government to try to get EMS back in this island. We're starting to force our hand a bit stronger now, so we're waiting on the reply from this ministry and what their next moves are. So that's still not has not gone to the wayside. Second bit of good news is that the new Wolf Island Recreation Committee has got its members. We have 11 members now who joined. And we're going to start the fun in a couple of weeks to get things going. So stay tuned for more stuff coming up that.
Okay, and the clerk has
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councilor Jablonski, can you please send those names to me so then at the next meeting, I can actually get them appointed by bylaw, please?
This is the community recreation committee. We still want to do a committee between this group and council, but this is more of a everybody want to put their time into it and not really follow a supreme guideline. So this is more of a general assembly type of thing.
and the clerk can.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So it's just like what we've done over on how then it's just a committee of members on the island. It's not an actual formed committee through the council, is that correct?
That is yet to come. That will be coming up. This is the core group just to get things moving on the island, and
Thank
will
you.
be committee actually correspond with council.
Okay, well. So it doesn't have access to budget or funds then.
Not at this point, no.
It's an ad hoc, and ad hoc is usually approved by council. Yeah. Okay. Councilor Hall?
Just to expand on that, Mike and I discussed it, and as we already know with our council, smaller is better. Sometimes it's hard to get everybody, so we thought we'd put it out there and get a recreation group And then through that group, see who would be interested in, putting their name forward to be a committee of council. Just to try to keep the number down smaller, so that when there is meetings, it's easier to get meetings, easier to get consensus on a vote.
So if we can, just kind of keep in mind, if we can have an odd number, of members, just for voting into this purposes. Thank you.
The meetings won't be public, is what you're saying.
If there's a committee of council, the community center board, I guess it is, yes, there'll be open meetings, but for the recreation group, no.
And what relationship does that have with Public Works? Chief Hawkins?
For the community center,
Yeah, community group.
I guess they would just have to go through Public Works if they wanted stuff done by Public Works. That would be up to the Public Works manager.
I think that's, sorry if I may, Madam Mayor. If there's anything related with public works, if the request could come through the CAO clerk, yeah, just for.
Yeah, because it's our asset. And so ultimately it's down to.
I don't have a whole lot to do with Public Works, so that's Vanessa's. I have enough.
Okay, thank you. Got a hand over. Hey, Councilor Ackland?
Yeah, I don't have any announcements at the moment.
Okay, Councilor Saunders?
Two things, back to your comment about your recreation committee, we started the one on how, as a committee of council. What we realized is that requires us to have, the clerk attend, we have to have minutes, we have to follow Robert's Rules of Order. And we started doing that, people around the room were going, that wasn't quite what we wanted. So if you remember, we expanded it, and now it's just an informal group. If we throw a bunch of ideas around, if we have a request for funding of any kind, we would take that to the CEO or to bring it to council. And it's very informal. People, they're enjoying that aspect. We can have a lot of free flowing discussion, and it works. It's working well right now. My other statement is, I want to apologize to council for the delay in getting restarted based on our very lively conversation in the back room, at the back of the room. What that brought to light is, the issue of community services, communal services is becoming more and more important. And I think what we owe the public is some sort of a presentation or whatever, so people can start to understand what's going on, how it would work, and all that stuff. And I know it's just getting started, but I know there's, based on the comment back there, there's a lot of interest in this is what exactly this is. So this isn't a formal request, I guess, but I think we should have on our plate at some point to have the board or the technical committee come forward and do some sort of presentation so people understand what's going on. And in fairness, this is a ways away, right? So that was the conversation in the back. So thank you.
Okay. And probably the most pressing update is also the murkiest. That MTO and the Wolf Islander 4 that remains tied up there. It seems like the cone of silence. I know that there has been a change at the upper level in the ministry. And I believe they're trying to get their heads around it. I also know that they, at this point, would have the report that they had talked about being completed regarding the operations of ferries. They have not shared it. It's gone to cabinet or the legislature, I'm not sure. The Ministry of Fisheries and Oceans is doing a report on the impact to the fisheries and that in the area. Large part probably related to the disturbance that they did with the dredging and the sediment and everything else. And they're, rather than Ministry of Environment, they're letting the Ministry of Fisheries and Ocean take the lead on it, and then if the Ministry of Environment needs to do anything else. And from the Howe Island perspective, there is there was to be a meeting this month, but that's been canceled. And the future of what can happen with the MTO vote, it's been clarified that they own it entirely, despite any contribution that the township has made in the past. So I'd like to be able to say we could come up with something great, but I can't say that at this point in time, and that's the truth. Anybody else has any other thought on that? But I don't want to give a false hope in this point in time. The ministry is going to be moving forward on doing a study. Now, Allen has already had numerous studies done, the same as Wolf Island has had numerous studies done. But they have asked that we get a good agreement, at least the county's asked that we get a good agreement of how Islanders want for a solution. I know the MTO is planning on a longer study, it will cost money and they will pay for it, and it'll take probably several years for them to complete. But in the meantime, we can at least do a poll of the residents that own property on that island. That's where I hope that we would be able to use the tax roll, because many people own property, but their mailing address is not on it. That said, I think that it behooves us to start having preliminary discussion with Islanders and get a thumbnail poll at least of what their views are. Because when the ministry comes along, that we want to have a better understanding, because it is always going to be a division, the same as on any island. There'll be some that are in favor of new ferries, and then they don't understand the limitations. When you get to such a ferry, it's going to impact your office cost, it's more staffing required, modifications, there's still going to be tie-up times for maintenance, etc. And then the option of fixed length is also on the table. They say that's something they rejected before, and in reality would be paid for if they had moved forward with it by now. But basically, the ferries, which are the most pressing issue we have, are still murkiest. And we can endeavor to persevere to get the answers needed. But I haven't got any answers to provide you at this point in time. If we can get a nurse practitioner on Wolf Island, that would be a win for the month. Now, and if we can get some money out of the county, great. And that, but aside from that, I really don't have another statement to make for that. Until March is one of those months, I guess. Okay, and now we're at notice of motions. I'd like to give notice in that for a motion that we suspend the Marysville secondary plan until a dual ferry service is provided, or clarification of whether even the land deal that the township had in place is still legally in place. Just for a bit of background on that, the proposed land that was to be the Marysville secondary plan, the owner of it has passed away and is now in the hands of his son. We were to have a road built across there in 2020, and we failed to do that at this point in time. I want to make sure that we aren't throwing money after something that isn't in place at this point in time. So that'll be a motion for the next meeting to consider, and maybe we'll have a few more answers from our CAO as to the legality and where we stand on that. But the Marysville secondary plan was created in the assumption that we would have a dual ferry service. The 80-car ferry, 75-car ferry, whatever you'd like to call it, Wolf Islander 4 is actually what the ministry recommended for 2,000 that we would need. This is now 2024. So it's essentially something that won't even meet the capacity of what we have in the existing island right now. How we could bring more contractors over here, let alone people to live, I don't know. So that's going to be my motion, whether it gets seconded or supported in that, but I think we need to look at this seriously. Any other notice of motions? Okay. I'd like to make an announcement, and it's a good announcement, in that we have Jesse Collins as our new treasurer, who happens to be a CPA, and really look forward to that because, having more certainty and reliability and frequency of financial reports will be very important to us, and certainly our budget system has been delayed in part. Waiting for the new treasurer to arrive, and I see the smile on her first class CEO. And I think we've moved a great step forward in increasing the level of professionalism that we need to deal with our economics. And I really look forward to hear where we're at from last year. And that, because that should be a given by this point in time, and maybe we'll have our first report at the next meeting. Okay, so I'd like to give a round of applause to our new secretary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just make a quick comment. I just want to thank everyone for the warm welcome, whether it be township staff, councilors, or the residents. I'm really looking forward to working with this council and serving the Chronic Island residents, so.
Thank you. We go.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to working with you.
Yes.
Yes, you're gonna find out how complicated we can be, despite being our size. Even when I see different reports citing 5 islands of Frontenac Islands, and somebody trying to mail a slip to me at Frontenac Island, I said, no, I live on. There's 12 islands. Anyways, now I'm gonna need a mover for, we're going into a closed session, municipal act, section 239K. The position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, specifically procedures and instructions regarding negotiations. So I need to have a mover and a seconder that the regular meeting of the council adjourned to a closed session at 12:35 regarding the municipal act, as I said, section 239. Have a mover for that. Councillor Acton, seconded by Councillor Wanty. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, and now, thank you very much. After the closed session, if you're around, By anybody that's inside? I'm just.
That does it for the first. Yeah, and then people don't have to. serve them.
So that plans well,
Right?
do that,
Can we do that? Can we do those first?
Madam Mayor, if what council is so inclined for the April, if we have a closed session. Start at 9:30, regular session, regular council at 10.
Yeah, that's what we do at the county. That, that we do it at 9 o'clock and then we start at 9:30. And sometimes it drags out, but not usually, usually it's tight. I don't have a great difficulty, but we'd have to have a bylaw to change that.
Leave that one with me, I'm not sure if I need to amend the procedure bylaw for the means that I'm about.
Check. Well, that's either closer to you. If your feet are cold,
Oh,
all
it's not, it's my hand, Councilor Owen, had to listen to this.
crazy calling people in. So,
Sort of a, pain in the ass, closed session in the middle of two public. Since we're not in session.
I didn't find anybody. Yeah.
No one's there.
I don't know shit about it. I didn't find anybody.
Okay. Okay, so we're back into open session now at 1300. And I'd like to have a mover and a seconder, and that the council directs staff to prepare a letter to the Frontenac County requesting that all restrictions regarding the 3,000 kilogram large vehicle from 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. and from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. be lifted, and that it be on a first come, first served basis. Moved by Councillor Ackley, seconded by Councillor Jablonski. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. All right, now we are at bylaws. And we have,
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, so I have one resolution for all of the bylaws. There was talk about the amendment to the planning fees, but I don't think that went through. So it's just the three readings and final passage for all the bylaws, and then 13 being the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council. And the last there is a specific one that council has a question on, and to be pulled out to address separately.
I got a question on procedure bylaw amendment.
So that one is where we changed from 4 p.m. to 6 or to 10 a.m.
But that's the one we were just talking about, potentially changing closed session tonight.
No, we've already made that change because we're meeting at 10. The request was for the closed session to be moved to the beginning of the council meeting. My request is that council lead that with me. I think the way the current procedural bylaw reads is that minor changes like that can be made without doing a major change, but again, leave that with me and I will clarify and email all members of council as to that process if I can need to.
Okay, we didn't have the bylaw presented during the meeting for the appointment of the building inspector.
No, so if I can clarify that, so we're not actually hiring a building inspector to, replace the other individual. Our CBO, Marcel Levine, requested, that we appoint this, individual, just to replace Marcel, when he's away on vacation or if he's off sick, if there's any inspections that need to be made. He would not be an employee of the municipality, but in order legally for him to be able to conduct the inspections, we would need to appoint as an inspector.
So we shouldn't have had this earlier in the meeting as,
Marcel did not provide a report for me.
anybody else have a question around that?
No, that was the only question I had. was He's just not a full-time employee, he'll be temporarily paid, and Marcel's not there,
Is that on your week behind it?
yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna confirm. So I need a mover and seconder that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaws number 008-24, 009-2024, 010-2024, 011-2024, 012-2024, and 013-2024, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council. And then mover, Councillor Ackley, seconder, Councillor Giovanni, please. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor? Passed. Motion to adjourn. We look at next. And that is at 13:08. Do I have a mover? Councillor Ackley, seconded, Councillor Halton. Discussion, all those in favor? Anybody opposed?
Not. Oh, sorry. I want to leave.
Okay. Underneath the deadline. Okay, good. Thank you very much, gentlemen.